As we know, you are a member of the Management Committee at the Law Centre. Isn't it true that you have questioned the Law Centre acting against the Council? And is this the reason why you and your fellow councillors cut the Law Centre's budget or funding? And is it the fact that the Law Centre sometimes sues the local council for good reasons to cut its funding?
Okay, well that's an issue that's arisen already this evening, and the charge is a serious one. That because the Law Centre enables people to sue the council, it's an easy target, and that's why its funding is being cut.
And I would presume that from time to time the Law Centre will continue to sue the council. I mean, the question of me asking questions about the Law Centre as on the management committee, I made perfectly clear that the decision was made. The cabinet member responsible was Councillor Anthony Lillis. I mean, I lobbied him about all sorts of things to do with funding in my ward, Ravenscourt Park, as would other local councillors, as you would expect. And he had to look at the overall picture, make an overall decision, and face all the jeers and cheers accordingly to the people that he gave funding to or didn't give funding to. But I've got no evidence that that was the basis of the decision. I think it was more in terms of thinking, here are these priorities. We're going to fund this, or we're going to fund that.
Do you then disagree with your colleague who said we are paying the people who are suing us?
Well, it was to state the fact that the council is paying people who. But what the question was that the basis? Was that the reason for the Law Centre being cut?
It certainly happened in the past. There's certainly been a tradition about it from time to time. And of course, it's very easy to make that accusation. I think it is difficult for politicians to give money to people who are going to throw it back in their face. I think it takes an enormous depth of democratic understanding to realise that it's not quite like that, because what you're dealing with is not politically motivated people, you're dealing with desperate people. Mental health cases of people who are locked up and want to have their rights asserted, that they want to get out. We're dealing with the homeless who are absolutely desperate. You're not dealing with people who have a political animus against the council, nor indeed the lawyers that represent them. You're dealing with people with absolutely no other recourse at all, who are at the bottom end of absolutely everything. I think it always is a risk, and I do think that there ought to be a whole new structure for the funding of law centres, and living in this hand-to-mouth way anyway doesn't seem to me to be right.
Well, I agree with and welcome a great deal, very nearly all of that. Apart from this, just one element of it, which is that these politicians are not giving us money, and we are not throwing it back in their faces. This is actually the attitude that undermines the independence that could exist. Politicians and national politicians are actually channeling our money. They're making decisions about the money of the community. And there is this proprietorial sense in which they are dispensing, as from on high, funds from their pockets. That it should not behove any recipient, to be ungrateful, in that respect. We are asking, and this really goes to Nick's point about the importance of independence, we are asking, in circumstances where it is difficult to sustain a diversity of funding, and my word, we have tried, we are asking them to be a little bit more grown up and mature as politicians, when they are making and when they are discharging their duties about deciding where to channel our money and not take it as a personal affront, when we pick upon us, you sometimes have to do a particular case. This is a very difficult thing for us to have to put up with. It's as if you've insulted a local councillor or local administration personally if you point out that an officer in the housing department has actually broken the law, in refusing an applicant to be accepted as a homeless person, for the purposes of rehousing. Okay. And when we insist that's done, we expect them, to adhere to the law and not to take it personally if they've been grown up about it.
Thanks, Rob.
the point about biting the hand that feeds, and this comes to the slight spat that's going on between Polly and John here, on the one hand is relevant, but the fact that the Horn of Africa has also lost money, the fact that lots of other organisations have lost money, suggests to me that it's not something quite as simple as a council withdrawing money simply because the law centre has been nasty to it. I suspect, my guess is that is exactly what's gone on, but I think the wider issue is that, frankly, councils are unreliable in their funding because they have their own political interests that come up now and again. They are paternalistic. There's simply no way of getting around the fact that there is a slip between cup and lip when it comes to theory versus reality. We like the idea, essentially, that a council is going to be caring, loving, and understand that it needs, for the good of civic democracy, criticism and so on. But in practical terms, councils very often don't function like that. And I think something that John said earlier really struck a chord. He was commending the very occasion as a sign of civic activism, as a sign of the vibrancy of civil society. And I absolutely agree. I think that this is a wonderful moment to kind of praise you all for being here, essentially. And I would go further and say, in a sense, put your money where your mouth is. Because I think that the fact is that for organisations like the Horn of Africa, for organisations like the Law Centre, they might not be able to survive going forwards as councils move their money around, as central departments move their money around, as they're pressed from every side. This is exactly the kind of opportunity for people in the local community, for private donors, for foundations to get involved and say, no, we believe in this, and we believe in it enough to give our own money to support it.
It seems to be to come from another planet.
Yes.
I've spent a lot of time fundraising for one kind of organisation or another. It's very difficult, hard work, and sometimes when you eventually do get to high net worth individuals who are willing to pay up for something, and you're talking here about big money, you're not talking about shaking a tin on the high street. You're talking about serious money every year, reliably provided. When you go to big funders, they may, on a whim or because they like the picture you made, give you a bit of money, but they're no more reliable about whether they're going to give you money next year or the year after. It's no more secure. And the idea that there is this huge well of money out there, we know very well that in this country people give less to charity than they do in other countries, and the rich give much less than the poor, much less, in terms of proportion of their income. They think they give a lot, but they give incredibly little, and it's very hard to get money out of them, and they give to vanity projects and things they want to control, because it's fun. They've got the 2 villas and a yacht, and now they think it's quite fun to run a charity. And they certainly don't want to run it democratically with a board of the kind that John described, with the people deciding themselves how they want their local law centre to be run. Mr. Bing wants to come in there and says, I fancy having a go running a law centre. And he will, for as long as he's got the money. Is that really the way you think these things should run? You think we should go back to some sort of primitive feudal system where we're all dependent on tugging our forelocks on a handful of rich guys? It just seems to be odd. One thing, the money won't be there. Another thing, if it was, it would be difficult to run things as they are now.
And I completely agree with what Polly just said. Completely. The thing is, also, we can't give up on holding these people to account. It's our money. As if we should give up asking them how they should, telling them. It's our privilege to tell them how they spend our money. We can't give up telling them how to spend it. It's not for them to go up and decide, now we don't have to listen to any people asking us to spend money on legal services. We can't give up on that. We should insist they delegate, they devolve to the local level, to an elected management committee with people who are elected, with councillors as well on it. Because that body of people has a greater legitimacy in saying what the money should be spent on and how it should be spent than some bureaucrat in central London or some politician in central London.
I completely take everything that Polly says. I simply have the concern that you have an impasse situation here. I don't think that local councils are particularly reliable. Polly doesn't think that individuals are particularly reliable. I wonder if there's a middle ground where individuals start to give more in order to show that they care. I'm not saying that you're suddenly going to find £4 million out of nowhere.